Hey guys, welcome back to the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles! In the last episode, we had our second summation examination in this trial, and I have to say I messed up twice. Not once, but actually twice. But we still got through, and now we're here, and the trial continues, so let's just continue and see what the judge says.
Now then, Lord Van Zieks, how does the prosecution wish to proceed? This trial is rapidly descending into a farce. Like a corked wine, the first few sips are bitter enough. But what follows is so repugnant, it's good for nothing save the gutter. If I may, Lord Van Zieks, the defense has just put forward a credible alternative explanation for what happened. Credible? Is that your considered opinion, Mr. Foreman? The defense's argument is a joke to which I barely know how to respond. But let me start by insisting that you must all familiarize yourselves better with the relative positions of those places being discussed.
What do you mean by that? What's his angle this time?
It should already be more than apparent that between the crime scene and the Gerritup household runs a rather wide street, Briar Road. Which means that the distance from the Gerritup's house to the scene is some, 15 yards.
Let me see, 15 yards. That's around 14 meters. 14 meters? Oh, that's a little farther than I'd imagined.
And, as you ladies and gentlemen of the jury rightly noted as having portentous significance, the fourth book was found in the victim's clutches. In other words, the smoldering book, wantonly hurled by the lady of the house, traveled some 15 yards to land on the opposite side of the road, neatly between the collapsed victim's fingers and thumb. Is that your final conclusion, my learned and deluded friend? And did the jackknife follow a near identical trajectory to plunge into the middle of the victim's back? This fantasy is somewhat stretching the notion of having a bad day for the victim, I think.
Even those pathetic serialized detective stories have more believable plots. There's nothing I can say to that. But the prosecutor loves the sound of his own voice. Mr. Sato, serialized detective stories are pathetic, are they? How dare he? Maybe let's pick our battles here. My lord, might I be allowed to speak?
As judicial assistant, you may speak for the defense. Yes, go ahead.
The prosecution may consider the idea a fantasy, but what the defense has postulated was believable enough to persuade the jury to change its leaning. And as such, the court has a duty to explore this alternative explanation as thoroughly as possible. To that end, Juror number 4, Mrs. Joan Gerritup, must be called to testify and submit to a cross-examination.
Saints alive! A cross-examination of a juror! Order! 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 Well, this is highly irregular. It is unprecedented for a member of the jury to be summoned to the witness stand.
Objection!
And unnecessary. Lord Van Zieks. There are already witnesses in the stand whose testimony the defense may further cross-examine. If my learned friend's Farkathil theory has any truth in it, then both a burning book and a jackknife must have flown through the sky before this couple's eyes. And we must assume they would be able to testify accordingly. What say you, witnesses?
Yes, sir! Constable Rolly Beat reporting for duty, sir!
Well, good morning, officer.
Sorry for dozing until now, sir! I haven't slept for a month on account of a villain who's appeared on my beat, sir! Oh, they are so heroic, those London Barbies. Patricia, my darling, I've been neglecting you, but no more. Oh, Rolly, my hero, you make me swoon.
Very well, I hereby reject the defense's request. And order the witnesses in the stand to testify again. State forthwith, before the court, and any details pertaining to defense's alternative explanation of events.
Yes, sir. Witness testimony. All right. The constable beats report. This case has nothing to do with Mr. and Mrs. Garridap. Believe me, a London Bobby is good for his word. You see, sir, the windows on the top floor of the Garridap house are top-hinged casements. Obviously, if anything had been thrown out of the window, we would have seen it. I did leave the scene to go and fetch help, but my trusty roller was there to make sure nothing was disturbed. I didn't take my eye off the crime scene for one moment, sir. Nothing strange to report on that front, sir.
Yeah, but she said he fell asleep. Well, this is quite startling. Top-hinged casement windows? That detail was not in the police report, Constable.
Yes, sorry about that. I must have been a little drowsy.
You cannot excuse your sins with drowsiness every time, Constable.
No, sir. Sorry, but what exactly is a top-hinged casement window?
And you cannot excuse your ignorance with such trite remarks, my learned friend.
Of course, sorry. I found it, Mr. Naruto. Cast your mind back to the windows in Mr. and Mrs. Garridap's room. All right, I'll try. So the window opens in order to allow air to circulate inside the house. But as it's a top-hinged casement window, it swings open along the upper edge, you see.
I'm glad you've rectified your ignorance. A casement window's most prominent feature is its stay, a metal bar which prevents the window from being opened beyond a certain amount.
It prevents its opening? This is all news to me. Absolutely correct, sir. In other words, if a book or knife were to have been thrown through the open window, it would have clattered against the pane and fallen straight down to the pavement below. No.
You see the problem then? Good. your education in windows is complete. There was never any possibility of either the book or the knife traveling 15 yards over the road. That is, unless the window pane had been shattered. Something we've discounted already.
But that can't be. Did you see that, Rolly? That young Japanese man just collapsed in agony. Oh yes, my darling, I saw it. I saw how they crumbled before me. Oh, Rolly, you're so strong. How is this happening? I haven't even started the cross-examination yet, and already my argument's been destroyed.
Counsel, if you could drag yourself upright again. The court awaits your cross-examination.
My lord? Oh good, another desperate situation. Constable Beats report. This case has nothing to do with Mr. and Mrs. Gary. Believe me, London Bobby's good for his word. Alright, we're gonna press straight away, of course.
How can you say that for certain?
A very good question, sir. And the answer is this. It has the noble founding principles of the force written on it as a reminder to all us policemen of our sworn duty. He showed us that before, didn't he?
Did he? I can't say I remember. I do.
To patrol the streets of London town and uphold the peace of the common man. It's what the job's all about. And that is why I can't stand here today beside my long-suffering wife and tell you a Bobby's good for his word. While rubbing my tired eyes, admittedly, sir. Oh, Rolly, you're so manly. Of course I am, my darling Patricia. Oh, Pat. Oh, Rolly. No, none of this is what I meant. I meant, how can you say for certain that this case has nothing to do with Mr. and Mrs. Gardab? I see, sir. You should have said so earlier, sir. Yes, well, so could you answer the question? That was a waste of time, then. Absolutely, sir. I will answer to the fullest of my ability, sir. There's a surprising reason why Mr. and Mrs. Gardab's domestic dispute can't be related to this case. But before I get into that, sir, just one thing. Yes? I'd very much like you and all your countrymen to understand the great British institution of Scotland Yard. So I hope you'll take back some tales of us London bobbies and how we uphold our guiding principles. I wasn't planning on going back just yet. I've only just arrived here. So, to that answer, I'd be happy to lend you my warrant card for your perusal. But I must warn you, you won't be able to get through it without shedding a few tears. Thank you, I'll try. Constable Beats' warrant card has been entered into the court record. A warrant card, a small folding valve that identifies London bobbies and contains the rules of conduct to which they must adhere. Aha! That means before we press, we are going to check that out, of course. We're gonna examine item 1. A policeman will strive to preserve the peace within his allotted beat. Item 2. A patrolling officer is expected to walk 20 miles around his beat every day for the furtherance of community relations. Item 1. Metropolitan Police Regulations. Item 1. Any crimes fall under the jurisdiction of the beat in which they are discovered. Item 2. When a crime is discovered on his beat, a policeman must assist with initial investigations and help detectives. Alright, so we're gonna keep that in mind. This is going to be important. You see, sir, the windows on the top floor of the Garrett house are topping casement. So let's press. Let's press. By which you mean they don't open fully, is that correct? Yes, sir. They're just there to allow a bit of air through the house, you see, so they're restricted as to how much they open.
And therefore, anything thrown out of the window from inside the room would simply strike the pane and fall to the street directly below. For clarity, allow me to mark the map. Here is the location where the objects would have fallen. Yes, directly opposite the scene of the crime on the other side of the rather wide road. Would it have been so hard for somebody to mention this top-hinged casement thing before? Well, I have another question for you, Constable.
And what would that be, sir?
How do you even know? Why, would you have any idea what sort of windows Mr. and Mrs. Garrideb's house is furnished with?
Well, sir, that's very simple. You see, I helped with the investigation yesterday.
Uh-huh.
Do we want to pursue right away, or do we want to...
No, let's just pursue that.
Do you have something to add, Mrs. Beat? Sorry.
You look, well, delighted. Is there some particular reason for that?
Oh, I was just remembering, that's all. We really were so lucky.
Lucky? What do you mean?
Well, of course I feel terrible for the poor woman who was attacked. Don't misunderstand me, please. But we were just so lucky it didn't happen on Rolly's beat. It was so close, you see.
Oh, I hadn't realized.
Oh yes, that street Briar Road, that's the boundary between Rolly's beat and the next one. Isn't that right, my love?
Constable Beat.
Yes, that's right. That's the reason I was helping out with interviewing the occupants of the Garrideb household yesterday. The house is on my beat, you see, sir.
That really was cutting it close then.
Constable, I wonder if you could clarify something. If the Garrideb household is on your beat, does that mean that the pavement next to it is as well? Outside Mr. Garrideb's house? Yes, ma'am. The pavement on that side of the road is part of my beat.
I see. I was unaware of that.
Just think, if the woman had been attacked just on the other side of the Briar Road, you would never have been able to go for that meal to celebrate our wedding anniversary. But that's the life of a Bobby after all.
Extraordinary people are Bobbies, tirelessly working for the benefit of all Londoners.
Do you know what I think? I think it was the good Lord's way of rewarding my Rolly for all his hard work. Don't you think so, my darling? That must be it, Pat, my love. That must be it.
I think perhaps we should make sure we have that information officially on record.
Leave it to me, Mr. Naruto. I'll take care of it immediately.
The case file information has been updated in the court record. Was found lies just outside Constable Beat's beat, the border of which runs down the middle of Briar Road.
And now it's my turn, I think.
Let me just... No, I didn't want to press. I wanted to check the court record. Anyway, but according to my notes here, the sun had gone down already and it was dark.
Oh, but Rolly and I were strolling along, gazing at the night sky and looking for a lucky star.
Sorry?
The star that will guide us to eternal happiness.
Can't it guide you to answer the question?
If a flaming book had cut across the sky in front of us, it would have lit up like a shooting star. And if it's seen a shooting star, I would have made a wish upon it. Let Rolly be an inspector, I would have said, 3 times at least. Of course, what with the smog and everything, we couldn't actually see any stars.
In short, are you trying to say that neither a book nor a knife crossed the sky before you?
Yes, sir, that is correct, sir. As sure as the night sky in London is starless, sir.
It certainly seems like they're telling the truth.
And then we saw the poor woman fall to the ground, so we ran straight over to help her. I did leave the scene to go and fetch help, but my trusty Rolly was there to make sure nothing was disturbed.
Yeah, before we do that, we want to check out the case file. So, one of the incident report details a young woman rendered unconscious following a stab wound. Victim, olive green, female, stout build, early 20s. Location, pavement of Briar Road, east side. Reporting officer, Rolly Beat. The victim remains unconscious. Her name was gleaned from her personal effects. Other details are unknown. Apart from the single stab wound from the large knife, no other sign of injury were observed. The sign was seen. Okay, so that didn't change. Only the constable reporting. Okay. Good to know. So we're gonna press, of course. Yes, you said that you went to a nearby police box to fetch another officer, is that right?
That's right, yes. If it had been on Rolly speed, I would have known exactly where I was going, of course. Don't feel bad, my love. You can't be expected to know the location of every police box on every beat. So Rolly told me the way, only I sort of got a little lost on the way. Patricia, my darling, that's why I love you. Your terrible sense of direction is bewitching to me. Oh, Pat. Oh, Rolly!
Oh, please.
So, I suppose I was gone for about 50 minutes. But like I said, my Rolly was at the scene the whole time, making sure nothing was disturbed.
I was off duty at the time, of course, but a true Bobby is never really off duty, sir. I didn't take my eye off the crime scene for one moment, sir. Nothing strange to report on that front. Okay, we're gonna press that for sure because she said earlier that he was asleep. Nothing to report.
That's correct, sir. I had my eyes wide open the entire time. Never looked away for a second. No one else approached the scene and nothing was removed from it. I can swear to that on the yard's honor, sir.
Really? That seems a little strange.
Beg your pardon, sir. Strange, sir. Seems altogether regular to me.
This burnt copy of The Lion's Pride was originally in the Garrett household. So the question remains, how did it find its way into the hand of the victim? Can you shed any light on that, seeing as you were at the scene of the crime the entire time?
Aha! Could it be a different copy, sir? One that just happened to be burnt as well?
Even if that were possible, why would the victim have been gripping a book like that in her hand? As we can see from this photographic print, she had a bag over her shoulder.
Well, sir, that book was in the lady's hand from the moment we arrived at the scene.
Is that so? There's something about this statement that's not sitting right with me. The two mysteries of how that knife ended up in her bag and how that book ended up in her hand. Back and hand, sorry. There must be some common thread between them.
Can I ask you something? Please, Mr. Lawyer, sir?
Oh, yes, of course. What is it?
You're doubting us, aren't you? I can tell.
What? I wasn't really, I mean, what's she doing?
Please, just because I'm a woman doesn't make my testimony any less valuable. You might just see me as the wife of a policeman, but I'm a woman of my word, I am.
I really don't remember ever suggesting that I doubted you.
No excuses, I don't want to hear it. My voice will be heard. My lord, you'll let me speak, won't you?
Yes, Mrs. Beat. I will allow you to supplement your testimony if you so desire. Sometimes the path of the least resistance is the sage one. That was a very loud mutter.
I heard that. That Japanese man thinks a policeman's wife's word counts for nothing, does he? Well, watch out, sir. I might let you get away with something like that, but my Rolly won't.
Duly noted, Mrs. Beats. Please, I humbly ask you to continue.
What could she possibly be about to say, I wonder? I know what I saw. My eyes never let me down. My sense of direction is a little off sometimes, though.
Uh-huh. We're gonna press that, of course. Mrs. Beat, nobody's questioning what you've told us.
I saw it, I did! That evening, I saw it clearly! That little Eastern man with the whiskers and the funny curved back sinking away from the scene!
Huh.
And I know what I didn't see as well. I didn't see any flaming books and knives flying through the sky.
All very clear. You also mentioned something about having a poor sense of direction.
Oh, yes, well, that's a little embarrassing, really. I'm always ending up at the wrong place when I've made arrangements to meet Rowley. He gets ever so cross.
Aha! Okay, let's pursue. Constable Beat. Is there a problem?
No, sir, no problem, sir.
Did your wife's remark just now bring something to mind, perhaps?
Well, in a way, sir, yes, sir. I was just remembering that the same thing happened that evening, is all.
You mean Mrs. Beat lost her way on the night of the incident?
Well, you see, I sent her off to find a police box and the next beat over from mine. But she was gone a fair bit longer than what I was expecting. I thought she'd be back inside 10 minutes, but my darling was gone a good 15. Oh, Raleigh, you're such a tease. But the reason I was so long was because of the bouquet, silly.
The bouquet? Sorry, what bouquet are you talking about?
Oh, it was a present for our wedding anniversary. Lord, Raleigh's so romantic. He saved up for it with farthings and happiness found. And hot pennies he found in the gutter while doing his rounds.
Yes, how romantic.
I've forgotten all about it until just now. Had you, my darling? Oh yes. But that was just between us. No talking about it anyone else, darling. You have to promise. Really? Oh.
What was that all about? Constable Bleed looked very obviously troubled during that exchange.
I'm afraid I can't offer any useful insight, Mr. Naruhodo. But I'm quite sure one thing. We have to ask Mrs. Beat about the bouquet.
Mrs. Beat, this bouquet you just mentioned. I'd like you to add details about it to your testimony, please.
Oh, really? Yes, I'd love to. What happened was I dropped my bouquet and ended up losing my way for a while.
Uh-huh. You mean you dropped the bouquet at the scene of the crime?
Yes, that's right. Oh, I was so upset. When I ran over and saw it was a woman with a knife in her back. I was so shocked I dropped the bouquet Rowley gave me. It was in a dark spot where the streetlights weren't casting any light, so I didn't notice at first.
And then you went to the police box to report it to the policeman whose beat it was on.
Yes, and I came back to the scene together with the other constable, you see. That's when I spotted my bouquet again. But the funny thing was, when I went to pick it up, it was nowhere near the victim's body at all.
In case you need reminding, Mrs. B, the victim is not deceased.
I was all flustered for a moment before I heard a voice calling me from the other side of the road.
Your husband, presumably?
That's right, silly me. I'd gone over the wrong side of the street. Although, I'm going to blame the bouquet this time. I can't think how it got there. Really can't.
So the big bouquet somehow moved from one side of Rye Road to the opposite. Curious indeed.
Isn't it? But the worst of it is, I forgot to pick the bouquet up again when we left the scene. The beautiful rose really bored me with that change from the gutter he spent so long collecting.
By bouquet, do you perhaps mean this sorry, solitary rose?
Oh! Oh! Yes, that's it! That's the bouquet Rolly bought me for one of our anniversary with all bits of change you found in the gutter. Maybe just call it a rose?
Tell us, Lord von Zieks, where did you come by that flower? According to the report by the police officer in charge of the crime scene investigation, it was found on the edge of the pavement in front of the Garadep household.
In front of the Garadep's household?
Although it wasn't noticed until the morning as it lay where the street lamps cast no light. It was believed to be of no relevance to the case, since it was found on the opposite side of the thoroughfare.
Oh, thank you, sir, thank you. Could I have it back now, please?
No, I think for good measure, this rose should be added to the court record as evidence.
Oh.
The anniversary bouquet has been entered into the court record. Anniversary bouquet, a present for Patricia Beat from her husband Rowley. The shock of seeing the stabbed victim caused Mrs. Beat to drop the rose where she stood.
But it's a symbol of our love. I want it back after the trial. Do you hear me? I want it back.
Good grief! Rest assured that I shall do my very best not to forget, Mrs. Beat.
I didn't take my eye off the crime scene for one moment, sir. Nothing strange to report on that front, sir.
Well, we're gonna press for sure. Nothing to report.
That's correct, sir. I had my eyes wide open the entire time. Never looked away for a second. No one else approached the scene and nothing was removed from it. I can swear to that on the yard's honor, sir.
Really? That seems a little strange.
Beg your pardon, sir. Strange, sir. Seems altogether regular to me.
This burnt copy of the Lion's Pride was originally on the Garadep household. So the question remains, how did it find its way into the hand of the victim? Can you... Okay, but we already had that, so I'm gonna jump over this. Skip it. Yeah, we're gonna skip that.
Well, Mr. Naruto, what do you make all of this?
Yes. The whole idea of an invisible attacker has been troubling me all along. But I believe I'm starting to get a picture of what really happened here now. The fourth book that had no business being at the scene of the crime made me sure that Mrs. Garadep was hiding something from us. But it's becoming increasingly clear that someone else has been hiding something from us as well. I think I may already be armed with everything I need to strike a decisive blow here. This time, it's going to expose the whole truth about this mysterious affair. Okay, nothing to do with Mr. Gap, believe me. You see, sir, casements, we would have seen it, but my trusty, nothing was disturbed. Dropped my bouquet. I didn't take my eye off the crime scene for one moment, sir. Nothing. Okay, but we have the bouquet now. So it has to be this, right? This doesn't do anything. The fourth book doesn't do anything. So, on that remark here, we have to present the bouquet.
Objection.
You claim, Constable Beat, there was nothing to report in the 15 or so minutes you were guarding the scene. But that cannot be.
What? What do you mean to say?
In your testimony just now, Mrs. Beat, you explained to the court
that when you arrived back at the scene of the crime with the policeman assigned to that beat, the bouquet you had dropped at the victim's side was no longer anywhere nearby.
Objection!
Yes, on the opposite side of Briar Road to where the victim was attacked. But considering the size of that meager bouquet, if a single sorry bloom can be so described, no doubt it was blown in the wind across the street, back into the gutter where it belongs.
Oh, you're an asshole, man. Sorry, guys, but that's not cool. She loves that. It's not a bouquet. Yes, it's just a flower, but he gave it to her. She loves it. Oh, that's not okay, Barack. That's not okay, man. Sorry. Meager?
Objection!
But if that were the case, why did Constable Beat not testify to the fact? No one else approached the scene and nothing was removed from it. Constable Beat swore to that on Scotland Yard's honor. But the bouquet belonged to me. It has nothing to do with the case. That's why Rowley didn't mention it, I'm sure. No, because sadly, it's not only your bouquet we're talking about here. More than one thing in this case is mysteriously the wrong way around.
What are you talking about?
Think about it. Besides Mr. Beat's bouquet, there's Mr. Gardepp's book. Mr. Gardepp's copy of The Lion's Pride, which was thrown out of the window by his wife, would have struck the pane of the casement window and landed here on the west side of the street. And yet, it was actually found here on the opposite side of the road in the victim's hand. Meanwhile, according to the testimony we've heard, Mrs. Beat's bouquet should have been dropped here at the scene of the crime on the east side of the street. But in fact, it was actually found here on the opposite side of the road in front of Mr. and Mrs. Gardepp's house. There's no logical explanation for those things, unless somebody deliberately moved them. What are you trying to say? The way you're talking, it sounds like you think my Rowley's done something wrong. Don't you listen to a word that scrawny lawyer says? Bittering on about books and bouquets, why should we care? It's nitpicking, that's what it is. Oh good, Mrs. Garrett's come around. You might call it nitpicking, Mrs. Garrett. But deliberately meddling with the scene of a crime is a criminal offense. It's called, tampering, Mr. Naruhodo. But the person responsible for this tampering cannot admit to it, for a very subtle but compelling reason.
Objection!
Tampering? You've barely heard the term before. Tell us, my learned friend, who would possibly have had cause to carry out such an elaborate deception?
Yes, there is someone who tampered with the scene of the crime that evening. All the evidence and all the testimony points to that one particular person. Counsel, I must demand that you substantiate this conjecture. Who are you saying is responsible for tampering with the scene of the crime? Well guys, I'm really sorry, but we are far above the half-hour mark, so I'm going to end this episode here. We are going to answer this question in the next episode of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. See you then.